finishing out this first topic, talking about the fundamentals of economics, we're going to look at what's called a production possibilities frontier or curve. And we're going to look at how this curve shows efficiency of an economy based on the decisions that government or society makes, growth or lack thereof, or even decline of an economy, and how opportunity cost plays into that. I'll go very briefly into all that in this presentation. We'll talk more about it in class. And we're going to look at why a country's production possibilities curve or frontier depends on how it uses its resources, including technology. So, first, what is a production possibilities frontier or curve, a PPC or a PPF? So this is a tool that economists, people in the government, folks like that use to measure or decide how and what to produce, what and how much, all that kind of stuff to produce. It shows alternative ways to use an economy's productive resources. So on this one, we've got two products, product A, product B. It could be any products you decide. And in this scenario, the government, the powers that be, are deciding between these two products, how much of these to produce. And of course, we know there are millions upon millions of products in this country, in the world, that governments and societies use. But for the sake of simplicity, we're going to stick to products A and B. And we'll go into examples of that later on and in class when we're face to face. So what this curve shows is different ways that this government might decide to allocate its resources. Produce more of A and therefore less of B, about the same of each, and then more of B and less of A. That just shows how a government, or what might result when a government or an economy makes certain decisions. So the PPF basically represents a maximum combination of output. So assuming that the government or the economy or the society is making the maximum output of all of its resources, using all of its resources to the most efficient extent possible. So all points on the curve here, so A, B, and C here. This is different combinations of using resources to produce products A and B. Anything inside of the curve, skip ahead for a second, anything inside the curve, X in this case, represents underutilization. This happens sometimes when there's unemployment or a downturn in the economy. Go back to this one. So the key to this is efficiency. Your economy, your society, your government, your businesses, whoever it is, might be you one day, need to use resources in such a way to maximize the production of goods and services. This is how economies grow. This is how we all keep moving forward. So inside the curve, again, is underutilization. This happens with unemployment and economic downturn, things like that. Points outside the curve really don't happen, and I'll speak to that more in a second. But points outside the curve represent economic growth. This will not happen unless there's economic growth. And what you see then, if there's economic growth, is this entire curve will shift to the right to meet that new point. And economies or societies will start playing around with new combinations of how to use resources. Same thing really with this point here. If you see underutilization, what eventually will happen if there continues to be a downturn, an economic downturn, whether it's just brief or even an extended recession in the economy, this entire curve would shift, even though if it's just temporarily, would shift left. And again, we'll discuss this more in person. So we can use this PPC or these PPFs to determine the cost involved in a decision, which is opportunity cost, which I went over with in a previous presentation we talked about in class. Of course, like we said, cost doesn't always mean money. It could just mean opportunity cost. So you giving up one option in place of another. It's the cost of your decision. And economists use the law of increasing costs. This is the way to look at how production shifts from making one item to another, product A to product B. More and more resources are necessary to increase production of the second item. So if they want to shift to making more of B, they have to allocate more resources for B and less for A. So basically, this is because all resources are not created equal. Some resources are better suitable for farming, while others are for manufacturing. If a government sees that it's going to make more money making more cars, just as a simple example here, then it's not going to produce more baling twine to make hay bales out in the field, it's going to find that resources for cars are more productive than baling twine to bale hay for horses. Again, it's kind of a silly example, and we'll talk more about that in class. But a government or society is going to shift its resources to what is most productive, pun intended. Here's another silly example, pizza and robots. Say you are a business owner and you're trying to decide between two products, robots or pizzas. And we're not going to get into how much money is involved in each one, but for the sake of this, we're going to look at different combinations that you might see here for production, opportunity cost table. So if you want to make 8 robots, of course this is in thousands, so 8,000 robots, you'd make 0 pizzas because all of your resources would be allocated to make the robots. If you decide you want to make a little bit of both, you shift your resources around to make some pizza, and you'll end up making fewer robots. And you can see how this continues down through this table all the way to the other extreme of all pizza and no robots. Again, kind of a silly example, but it works. We'll discuss this more in class, and we'll go over some other examples, and you'll get to practice with some of these curves to see how they work, because it is kind of it's a new concept, can be kind of confusing for some, so we'll get into that more later. So good luck, and we'll see you next time.